Exclusive contracted novel by Feilu Novel Network. With a rebellious understanding, she kills the gods at the age of 8, and is the Maid Yan Fei. Traveling through the world of integrated martial arts that has not yet been unified, Yingfeng discovers that he has become a little brat. Fortunately, he awakens his supernatural intelligence. You observe the Gai Nie swordsmanship. You have a feeling in your heart and successfully comprehend the meaning of the great river sword. You have read through the Yin Yang family's teachings. Thousands of techniques have merged into your heart, successfully comprehending the unique door of the Wind Queen. You have been training for 10 days. You have successfully connected with the soldiers and achieved great military success. Understand the military situation. After discovering the posture of Yingtian, Zulong immediately rejected the public opinion and decided to spare no effort to help Yingtian grow. And this matter couldn't help but become a laughing stock among the 6 countries. Everyone in the world thinks that Zulong has placed national fortune on a baby. It's really crazy. Until the year when Yingtian was 8 years old, he slashed open the city gate of Xinzheng, the capital of Han, with one sword. The whole world is dumbfounded. Zhao Wangqian said, "I admit that a few years ago I spoke a bit loudly." Li Mu. God of War. What kind of god of war am I? He destroyed a country at the age of 8. Yan Dan. An 8-year-old land immortal. You still said you haven't opened it. Yan Fei, Yan Lingji. Your Highness, it's my turn to serve today. Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Chapter 1. Understanding Against Heaven. Apprentice Gai Nie. You still. You are listening at novelfull.audio. De Qin, inside the Xianxia Palace. Is this the prince that the king asked me to teach you? Are you serious? At such an age? Even laying the foundation for martial arts is too early. Gai Nie frowned slightly and looked at Yingfeng, the 19th prince, who was less than 4 feet tall and wore a brocade robe but still had a childish look on his face. He couldn't help but feel suspicious. That's what the king said. A guard beside Yingfeng awkwardly said. In the morning, the king suddenly instructed him to lead the 9th prince, Yingfeng, to personally come to the Gai Nie mansion to pay his respects. As for the specific reason, the king did not say much, but only demanded that he must be made to worship under the gate of Gai Nie no matter what. So the guards also looked confused. Your Majesty, how could you make such a decision? His Highness the 19th prince is only 5 years old now. Even the eldest son Fusu, who was highly valued by the king, did not begin to learn martial arts and strengthen his physique until he was 7 years old. This 19 prince, it's too early. Humph. Under their gaze, Yingfeng stretched lazily. Looking at Gai Nie in confusion ahead, his heart couldn't help but feel a bit complicated. He traveled through time and awakened his rebellious golden finger as soon as he arrived. No matter what you see, you can understand its mysteries and create its methods. Drinking water, mastering the technique of pouring the sea fist, savoring the wind, transforming into wind and cloud palm, observing stones, and learning to break stone legs. After spending his infancy with a low profile, he thought of gradually revealing his strength in front of that eternal emperor. But I don't want to. This father emperor really values himself too much. One way is to let Gai Nie, who is known as the Sword Saint, lay a foundation in martial arts for himself. It's simply outrageous. You should know that in today's Great Qin, the 6 states including Qi, Chu, Yan, and Zhao have not yet been pacified, with wars raging and various regions being conquered. Externally, dynasties such as the Ming, Song, Han, and Yuan dynasties stand tall, with powerful figures rising together to compete in the Central Plains. This is a world of comprehensive martial arts. Similarly, it is also a world where martial artists defy the heavens. Taiichi Zhang Sanfeng, sword godly Chun Gang, old master of the Tang Academy. Each one is a top-notch powerhouse who flips their hands for the clouds and covers their hands for the rain. Although Gai Nie is inferior, he cannot be underestimated. If I had known that day, I would have raised a lighter cauldron. Just thinking about 3 days ago, when he lifted the 1,000-pound cauldron with one hand, Xinzheng's ghostly expression made Yingfeng feel a bit helpless. The 19th prince is too young, and his foundation, still has some shortcomings. If it's just for his enlightenment, I can accept it, but if it's for apprenticeship. Looking at the innocent face of Yingfeng in front of him, Gai Nie frowned slightly and pondered for a moment before speaking in a deep voice. The most important thing for the descendants of Gigu is the concept of qualification. In Gai Nie's eyes, the internal strength of Yingfeng's bones was exceptionally ordinary, and he was definitely not a martial arts practitioner. Even if he were forcibly recruited, the foundation of the 19th prince would not be enough to propel him to a higher level. Here, sir. Having been in the palace for a long time, the guards naturally recognized the gentle refusal in the Gaelic language and couldn't help but feel extremely embarrassed. Gai Nie in front of me is the most valued swordsman around the king. If he doesn't want to accept his apprentices, let alone the 19th prince, it's probably not easy for the king to give orders forcefully. Master Gai, do you think it's possible to reconsider? No need. Before the guard could finish speaking, he was suddenly interrupted by Yingfeng waving his hand beside him. Please go back and report to father, there's no need to worry. Yingfeng's voice was indifferent, and his tone was extremely calm. In today's world, not everyone is qualified to accept his highness as an apprentice. Although he was young, when he was still in his infancy, he had already realized the dragon divine art in his memory just because he had been in constant contact with Xinzheng. This technique is extremely powerful and can refine internal power. Now, over the years, his internal strength has already entered the realm of a master. It is precisely because of such self-protection power. He dared to show his uniqueness in front of Xinzheng. After all, having a good teacher is better than slowly exploring oneself. But the one introduced by the father to himself seems to be just like that. The scene was silent, and the corners of Gai Nie's mouth twitched slightly. He is a swordsman who has been despised by people. Still not qualified to accept apprentices. This 19 prince is really ambitious. Your Highness 19 laughed. Since that's the case, I'll bet you with a set of entry-level swords. If you can block it, then take your Highness as your disciple. How about that? Gai Nie's voice remained calm. As the son of Xinzheng and with a noble status, Yingfeng could not directly refuse. It was only because he was unwilling to be underestimated that he said such a thing. I just hope to use this sword to make the prince understand the difficulties and retreat. The journey of martial arts is not as simple as he imagined. As soon as he reached out, a small wooden branch flew out of nowhere and landed in his palm in the distance. The sword energy lingered around, and in an instant, there was a sword sound moving. As a swordsman, Gai Nie has already reached the realm of having a sword without a sword in his hand. Even a wooden branch can be transformed into a divine weapon in his hands. Looking at the sword-like aura soaring in front of him, Yingfeng couldn't help but feint a smile. It's flashy and flashy. With a thought, the inner strength of the body condensed into a right fist, and no wind rose from around. The walls on all sides are marked with cracks. Originally on the 9 cloudless skies, there were suddenly bursts of thunderous vibrations coming from above. Seeing this scene, Gai Nie frowned. Is this kid's inner strength so powerful? Accompanied by the concentration of Yingfeng's mind and inner strength, a dragon-shaped phantom appeared behind him at an unknown time. What is this? Gai Nie's heart trembles with fear. Just feeling this dragon-shaped phantom made him feel a chilling sensation from the depths of his soul. Just like facing my master Guguzi. And by Yingfeng's side, the guards had already hidden aside. He widened his eyes, his gaze glazed. Is this really the 19th prince he just saw? Chapter 2. The danger of one fist. De He Jian E. Gai Nie is foolish. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. The danger of one fist. De He Jian E. Gai Nie is foolish. Drink. Suddenly, in shock from the two of Gai Nie and the guards, Yingfeng drank and stomped heavily, directly stepping out of the huge pit on the ground. Right fist, hit hard. Ow. In the void, like a dragon roaring. The astonishing momentum surged into the clouds. Gai Nie can no longer hide, his pupils suddenly tighten. So strong. This towering momentum has already surpassed his cognition. The wooden branch in his hand had already broken, and Gai Nie was shocked to be in place. Feeling the astonishing momentum, his body instinctively wanted to pull out the sword of the abyssal rainbow from his waist. If there is no sword, he will die. Definitely dead. In the air, watching Gai Nie draw his sword, Yingfeng raised his eyebrows. Gai Nie is the first swordsman of the great Qin dynasty. If he were killed, it would be difficult for Father Wang to explain it to him. Thinking of this, Yingfeng immediately withdrew 70% of his fist strength in secret. Bang! Dang! The clash of fist force and sword blades resounded heavily. Gai Nie's whole body was like that shell, fiercely slamming backwards onto the wall. Smoke and dust filled the air, and the ground cracked. Ha! Yingfeng stood in place, his face slightly pale. The final dark retreat, but it backfired on him quite a bit. Looking at the smoke-filled wall in front of him, Yingfeng couldn't help but twitch his eyelids. Tang Tang Sword Saint, is that all? Can't even withstand a punch that received 70% force. Wait. Suddenly, Yingfeng's heart suddenly shook. This Gai Nie. Shouldn't I have been beaten to death by myself, right? If this punches the Sword Saint to death, then the situation will escalate. Yingfeng's heart trembled as he wanted to move forward, only to find that in the smoke, Gai's body had already stood up on its own. The smoke and dust dispersed, and his body appeared slightly disheveled. His originally pure white clothes were covered in dust, and his chest was even blackened. The appearance of the Immortal just now is completely different. The eunuch was completely frozen in place, with his mouth wide open enough to fit an egg in his body. He saw the famous first swordsman in the martial arts world of the great Qin dynasty, Gai Nie, who was surprisingly thrown away by the 19th prince with a punch. Is this not a dream, is it? At this moment, Gai Nie also had a bewildered expression on his face, his eyes fixed on Yingfeng ahead, and his heart was already filled with turbulent waves. If it weren't for him raising his sword to block just now, relying on the punch of Yingfeng, he might have died on the spot. These 19 princes are so naturally divine. And as soon as he thought of the illusory dragon shadow that had just emerged behind him, Gai couldn't help but feel a tightness in his heart. That giant dragon, like the supreme deity of the world, is proud of all living beings. How could the 19th prince possess such a natural imperial aura? This is truly thought-provoking and terrifying. Who? Gai Nie took a deep breath and looked straight at Yingfeng in front of him. After a moment, his eyes flickered as if he had thought of something, and he said in a deep voice. Your Highness, it is true that I was careless just now. I will take this sword seriously, and your Highness should pay attention. At this point, he naturally understands the extraordinary qualities of Yingfeng, so this time he will take his sword seriously. Your Highness 19, let me see what kind of terrifying power you have. With a cold gaze, Gai Nie's sword energy was concentrated in his hand, and he immediately transformed into a void sword arrow. There is no wind around, and the sword is full of energy. The rainbow in the waist tingled slightly, as if feeling something in the heart. Yingfeng was surprised and felt the sword energy around Gai Nie. He understood that the first swordsman of the great Qin was going to take it seriously. However, precisely because of this, Yingfeng's eyes were somewhat excited. I would like to see how much difference there is between myself and these famous powerhouses. The rainbow shines through the sun. Gai Nie drank coldly in a low voice, his unparalleled sword energy instantly lingering in his hand. The terrifying power instantly covers a radius of 10 miles. At the same time, Yingfeng's gaze was fixed on the sword breath around Gai Nie in front of him. Somehow, he felt something in his heart. Around me, an inexplicable sword intent surged in my heart. With a palm swipe, a wooden branch flew into the palm, and the essence of Yingfeng's eyes flashed. In a daze, there seemed to be a long river of sword energy hanging from before Yingfeng's eyes. Blessed to the soul, cut with one sword. Just like the Milky Way surging, with endless sword energy, washing away the world. Ding! Congratulations to the host for observing the sword of Gai Nie. Understand the meaning of the Great River Sword. On the other side. In the Xianxia Palace. Xinzheng, dressed in a black robe, sat in front of the table, looking at the intelligence in his hand and feeling a headache. Yesterday's news was that the border of Zhao was on the verge of movement, as if there was a move to advance towards the state of Qin. If it were normal, he would definitely launch an attack, but 3 days ago, there was a sudden heavy rain disaster in the territory of Daqin. People's hearts fluctuate, and if we want to go to war with them, there will inevitably be many difficulties. Meng Tian, what do you think? Xinzheng looked at Meng Tian beside him and asked in a voice. Meng Tian hesitated for a moment, pondered for a moment, and then arched his hand to answer. Your Majesty, I believe we should launch an attack. If we give up our attack due to the disaster of heavy rain, it will inevitably make the 6 countries think that our great Qin is weak and there will be many disadvantages. Upon hearing Meng Tian's words, Xinzheng nodded slightly. Immediately, his gaze turned towards Meng Tian, who was respectful and gentle, with a white outfit and a face that resembled his own Fushu. Fusu, what should you think of Zhao's actions? Fu Su is his crown prince of the Great Qin, who will be in charge of the empire in the future. Xinzheng actually wants to hear his opinion. Father and son believe that appeasement should be the main focus to avoid any trouble. Faced with Xinzheng's inquiry, Fu Su spoke with caution and respect. He is well versed in Confucianism and has a benevolent and kind heart, so naturally he does not want to cause more trouble. Upon hearing Fusu's words, Xinzheng paused with his fingers. Although he didn't say much more, a hint of disappointment flashed deep in his eyes. Fusu has a kind and benevolent personality, and if he ascends to the throne of God in the future, he will definitely be a wise ruler. But in the end, there is still a lack of decisive killing, which is not in line with the wild nature inherent in Qin's bones. If we blindly show weakness to the enemy, it will only fuel the enemy's momentum and reduce our own. Over such a long period of time, their wild nature in their hearts will inevitably fade away, and they will only be slaughtered by others. As the crown prince of the Great Qin, Fu Su doesn't understand such simple principles, which really disappoints Xinzheng. Sigh. I sighed inwardly, recalling that among all my sons, it seemed that only Yingfeng was most like me. Thinking of Yingfeng, Xinzheng suddenly remembered that today seemed to be the day for Gai Nie to teach this son. With a movement of his eyes, he turned to stand up and placed the memorial in his hand. If you've been sitting for a long time, why don't you go out and take a look? Fushu, Meng Tian, today is the day when Gai Nie teaches you his 19 younger brothers. Follow me to take a look. Meng Tian and Fu Su were both stunned, as if they had never expected Xinzheng to suddenly do so. But how could the king's orders be resisted by them, even if they bent down to show compliance? Meng Tian is fine, but in Fu Su's heart, it is incredibly complex. 19 younger brothers are only 5 years old now, but their father actually delayed political affairs for him and personally asked Gai Nie to teach them. These various behaviors are really too biased, right? Even he did not receive such treatment. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but let out a soft sigh. The three of them walked out of the Xianyang palace and headed towards the Gai Nie mansion. There is no one guarding around. Joke, with Meng Tian and the Golden Fire Cavalry here, who dares to act recklessly? Quickly, a few people arrived near the mansion of Gai Nie. Just as they were about to approach, they suddenly saw a strong sword intent rushing into the clouds inside the mansion. Like a wandering dragon sailing out to sea, intimidating a radius of 10 miles. What a strong sword aura! This sword aura is approaching the realm of the Great Master. Did Mr. Gai break through? Meng Tian was extremely shocked, his deep voice was shocking. As a military master, he could naturally feel the terror contained in this concentration of sword intent. And in this mansion, who else could be the person who could unleash such a terrifying sword-like intent, besides Gai Nie? Xinzheng's eyes were also full of brilliance. If Gai Nie really broke through the realm of a great master, it would definitely be great news for the Qin. A great master, capable of governing the country. And by his side, Feilu was also deeply shocked. Even though he was not skilled in swordsmanship, he could still feel the terrifying power in this sword. Sure enough, Mr. Gai is about to break through. Just as the three of them were simultaneously shocked by the shocking sword intent, the soaring sword energy suddenly fell and exploded. The next moment, the three of them only saw a loud vibration from the wall in front of them. A figure smashed through the courtyard wall and flew backwards. Chapter 3. Born Sword Immortal. Emperor's Talent. Admission Yin. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The figure fell to the ground in a daze, kneeling on one knee. Its body was in a state of embarrassment, with a trace of blood spilling from the corner of its mouth. And when they saw this figure clearly, all three of them were shocked at the same time. Gai, Mr. Gai. Xinzheng, Feilu, and Meng Tian stood frozen in place. If it weren't for the fake yuan hung on Gai Nie's waist, they might have thought they were dizzy. What the hell is going on here? Sword Saint Gai Nie, how could you be so embarrassed? Can it be said that the soaring sword intent just now did not come from the hands of Gai Nie? But how could this be? Is there anyone in the entire Great Qin who is even more skilled in swordsmanship than Gai Nie? When the three of them were all shocked, they saw a petite figure holding a withered branch walking out inside the courtyard wall, followed by a shocked eunuch. This figure is exactly Yingfeng. Looking at the three stunned people outside the courtyard wall, Yingfeng was also taken aback and couldn't help but feel a bit embarrassed. Father, big brother, General Meng, why did you three come? Looking at the withered branches in Yingfeng's hand, I felt the strong sword intent lingering around him, as well as the half-kneeling and disheveled Gai Nie. In the minds of the three, an extremely bold idea involuntarily emerged. The sword just now, shouldn't it be from the hand of Yingfeng? Hiss. Meng Tian took a cold breath and threw out the seemingly absurd idea in her mind. Impossible, absolutely impossible. The 19th prince is only 5 years old, how could he possess sword energy close to the realm of a great master? And it turns out that the one who was injured by him was the sword Saint Gai Nie. This is really unbelievable, unbelievable. Feilu widened his eyes and looked at Yingfeng with a face full of fear. At this moment, he felt as if he had met this brother, who had always been low-key and had little social interaction, for the first time. This little brother is so unfamiliar. And the most shocking one was Xinzheng, whose long eyes widened and his breathing involuntarily became heavy as he looked at Yingfeng. Feng, was that sword you just swung and slashed? Unable to hold back his excitement, Xinzheng tried his best not to look unusual, but the surprised expression in his eyes still betrayed him. Yingfeng scratched his head and his face seemed somewhat awkward. He looked at Gai Nie, who was half kneeling on the side, and could only nod helplessly. Father, it was indeed me just now. Forget it, if you can't hide it, you can't hide it. Anyway, your strength will eventually be exposed. As soon as the words were spoken, the entire scene fell silent. Yingfeng could feel it, and all three of his gaze became incredibly hot, as if he was about to completely see through his entire being. Is it because I am too high? Profile. Born sword immortal. Your Highness 19 has such talent. Ying Tian swallowed his saliva, and the excitement in his heart was indescribable. De Qin has existed for 100 years and has never encountered such an incredible demon. Before the age of 5, his swordsmanship charged directly towards his great master. It is hard to imagine how terrifying he would become if he grew up in the future. I'm afraid it's an impact, but the rumored land immortal realm is not too much, right? And Fushu's breathing became incredibly heavy, and for a moment, his heart was filled with mixed flavors. His 19 younger brothers are so outstanding. Xinzheng also clenched his hands tightly, wishing to see through his son in front of him at a glance. At this moment, Gai Nie, who was being ignored by everyone, also stood up. Although he was all disheveled, his eyes were filled with a deep sense of terror. The sword that Yingfeng had just wielded was something he had never seen in his life. The sword's meaning is like a surging river, continuous and endless, layered and stacked. It is incredibly terrifying. Even his long rainbow shining through the sun couldn't resist it. Such sword intent is truly amazing and curious. If possible. Gai Nie murmured in a low voice, he was obsessed with swordsmanship. The sword move he had just won the wind with, which he had never seen before, made him curious and eager to learn from it. But looking at Yingfeng's petite body and the wooden branch in his hand, Gai Nie couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. The mood he had just wanted to ask for advice suddenly fluctuated. If the martial arts world finds out that a swordsman is actually asking a 5-year-old child for swordsmanship skills, he might be laughed off. Although he doesn't care about any reputation in the martial arts world, it's really difficult for him to bring down his face. After all, I am a descendant of Ghost Valley. It seems that my son is really different from ordinary people. Not bad, not bad. Watching Yingfeng's awkward expression, Xinzheng burst out laughing, his eyes filled with joy and excitement. Fenger, come on, whoever you want to worship now, no matter who, father will definitely invite you. With the power of Xinzheng, even if no one spoke, he had already guessed about the matter of Yingfeng and Gai Nie, so it happened to be exposed at this time. Upon hearing Xinzheng's words, Gai Nie's lips twitched, but in the end, he could only give a helpless bitter smile. Oh, I didn't expect to be despised one day. Apprentice. Yingfeng was taken aback. Who should I learn from? With a raised eyebrow, he began to ponder carefully. He possesses exceptional intelligence and has reached such a level in just 5 years. Perhaps it is meaningless to pursue a master. After all, I'm afraid in this world, no one can surpass themselves in terms of cultivation speed alone. Instead of relying on apprentices and remaining stagnant, it's better to study the techniques of Taoism to deepen one's knowledge or participate in battlefield battles in person, so that one can quickly improve. After all, he is a golden finger with super intelligence. It seems impossible to engage in battlefield battles in a short period of time. After all, even if Xinzheng indulges himself, it is absolutely impossible for him, who is 5 years old, to go to battle and kill enemies. So there is only one path left. That is enrollment. Thinking of this, he pondered for a moment and bowed to Xinzheng. Father, I would like to request to go to the Yin Yang school of the Yin Yang family to study the Taoist scriptures and supplement my literary knowledge. Perhaps, when he enters the realm of Yin Yang studies, he will have greater gains. Upon hearing Yingfeng's request, everyone was taken aback, and even Gai Nie's eyes twitched slightly, feeling somewhat surprised. The Yin Yang Academy is a college established by the Yin Yang family for their inner disciples, mainly teaching them the techniques of Yin and Yang, as well as the theory of the heavenly stems and 5 elements. No one expected that Yingfeng would request to study here. Xinzheng raised his eyebrows and looked at Yingfeng with some curiosity. Fenger, the Yin Yang family holds a special position in our great Qin dynasty, with strong exclusivity. This Yin Yang Academy has never accepted anyone, and even my Wang family's children only have one admission quota. Do you really want to go? Although he holds power over the world as a king, the Yin Yang family has existed for thousands of years and has a deep foundation. Even he is not easy to force. It's not that he's reluctant to give up the admission quota, but because he feels it's too early to enroll in the 5th grade at the age of Yingfeng now. Feel the gaze from all directions. Yingfeng's gaze is incredibly firm. Father, please confirm with me. Chapter 4. Enrollment at the age of 5. Absolutely ridiculous. Seeing at night. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hahaha, good. Since my son has such ambition, then father, I will satisfy you. Xinzheng laughed heartily, his eyes full of brilliance. Standing in the heart of the heavenly sword, yet not swayed by martial arts, instead actively seeking to supplement one's own knowledge. If it weren't for what he saw with his own eyes, it would be difficult for Xinzheng to believe that this was the choice made by the 5-year-old Yingfeng. Both civil and martial arts advance together, and kings and tyrants work together. This is simply a natural talent for emperors. Someone, pass on my decree. 5 days later, the 19th prince wins the wind and enrolls in the Yin Yang Academy. What? The king actually allowed the 19th prince to enter the Yin Yang Academy. Inside CRRC mansion. Zhao Gao, with a gloomy face and spider-like eyes, crushed the teacup in his hand. Sir, this matter is absolutely true. The king has issued an edict that in 5 days, the 19th prince will officially enroll. Under it, one of the 6 swordsmen, Duan Shui, said in a deep voice that he would never have believed this unless it had been for the edict of Xinzheng. Damn it. Surprisingly, a little child took the lead. Zhao Gao let out a cold drink, his eyes full of murderous intent. He was originally prepared to advise the king to transfer the quota of the Yin Yang Academy to the people who were trapped, and to add sand to the Yin Yang home to place his own people. Unexpectedly, it was caught first by Yingfeng. A 5-year-old child enrolls in school to comprehend the Taoist scriptures. Jokes, I'm afraid I can't even recognize words. A sinister light flickered in Zhao Gao's eyes, and the corners of his mouth snorted coldly. Yingfeng, it's a bit interesting. Our family remembers you. Yin Yang home, inside the square. A void. Wearing a mask on his face and a burly body dressed in a black robe, he was gazing at a star chart in front of him. In my eyes, it feels like the depths of Joyo. He is the most mysterious leader of the Yin Yang family, Emperor Taiichi. Your Excellency the Eastern Emperor. Behind him, a handsome young man with a blue-purple tattoo on his face walked slowly in and bowed to him. Although he may seem like a child, his mind has actually reached adulthood, with cold flashes shining in his snake-like eyes. This person is the Star Soul, one of the guardians of the Yin Yang family. Your Excellency the Eastern Emperor, the king has ordered that the 19th prince, who is only 5 years old, be admitted to our Yin Yang Academy. How will this matter be handled? The Star Soul respectfully spoke, and as the words fell, the Eastern Emperor paused with one finger. There is a wave of volatility in the void. After a long time, the deep and hellish voice slowly sounded. As a decree, there is naturally no objection. But when this son was only 5 years old, the king gave the only spot to the child. Isn't that a waste? The Star Soul frowned. You know, this is the quota that countless people dream of. Xinzheng would be willing to waste a quota for a child. Your Majesty, it's not something we can see through. Follow the decree. In front of him, the voice of Emperor Donghuang remained cold, like a void. Yes. Although Xinhuan was unwilling, since the Eastern Emperor Taiichi had already ordered, he had no other choice but to agree and immediately retreated. And in that void, the body of Emperor Taiichi remained profound. In the eyes behind the mask. At this moment, it is also a colorful and dynamic scene. De Qin, the 19th prince. No matter how turbulent the outside world may be. Nowadays, Yingfeng has completely sunk into the sea of books. After deciding to focus on enlightenment, he became extremely thirsty for textbook knowledge. Observing and comprehending books from the ancient pre-Qin period all day long. With his super-intelligence, even books from the ancient pre-Qin period can provide him with insights and integrate them. The internal power on his body is constantly accumulating every day, and he actually has the intention of breaking through. Who? Covering the book, Yingfeng's eyes flickered, whispering softly. Ah, the Yin Yang family does have some means. For 3 whole days, he searched through the entire Daqin library. But I have never found any books on the theory of Yin and Yang. It seems that the monopoly and information blockade of the Yin Yang family are extremely severe. In other words, not only the Yin Yang family, but also the 100 schools of thought today. When he pushed open the door of the Daqin library, it was already late at night. Seeing this, Yingfeng couldn't help but smile bitterly. I didn't expect that the time to study hard would be in this world after crossing time. If it were in my past life, I might have already attended a good prestigious university. Shaking his head and dispelling the distractions in his mind, Yingfeng was about to get up and walk towards his mansion. However, at that moment, a dark shadow suddenly appeared in front of him. The figure was wearing dark armor, with scars on his face, and his gaze was unusually cold. He was half kneeling in front of him. Yingfeng was taken aback and couldn't help but speak up. Commander Zhang, what can I do for you? That's right, the person in front of me is Zhang Han. Although he is only 15 years old now, he has great abilities and has long been favored by Xinzheng, directly becoming the smallest commander of the Shadow Guard. Looking at the future officials of the Great Qin's humorous, Yingfeng was somewhat puzzled. What's the big deal when I suddenly come to find myself in the middle of the night? 19th Prince, please, Your Majesty. Although young, Zhang Han has a cold and stern demeanor that is different from his peers. Oh. Father, if that's the case, then lead the way. Although there were some doubts as to why Xinzheng summoned him late at night, Yingfeng simply let Zhang Han lead the way. Zhang Han didn't say much, and after bowing, he walked straight forward. Half an hour later, the two finally arrived at a study. Yingfeng looked up and couldn't help but have a slight change in his gaze. Just because the place in front of me was actually Xinzheng's private study. At the same time, it is also the place where he handles government affairs. Chapter 5. Strategies for supporting the Soviet Union. Weak and deceitful. Never. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Father, my son is here. Gently knocking on the door, Yingfeng spoke softly. Although I don't know why Xinzheng asked me to come to his place to handle government affairs at night, the king's order is divine and he cannot refuse, even his most beloved son. Come on in. A deep voice came from the study room. After hearing the news, I pushed myself in. In the vast study, there was only one desk. Beside the desk, the lights were dim. A bundle of 10 pounds of paper folding table on both sides of the ground. Layer by layer, neatly arranged. Obviously, it is the number of memorials reviewed by Xinzheng today. In the middle of the desk, Xinzheng sat alone, although it was late at night, his momentum remained undiminished. Seeing such a situation, even the proud person of Yingfeng couldn't help but feel admiration. This is Xinzheng. In the future, we will be able to unify the 6 kingdoms of the world and take the lead in creating a victorious government for the Great Qin Empire. Even though he is still known as the King of Qin at this moment, his level of diligence in politics is no less than in the future. The wind is coming, come on, let father take a good look at you. Watching Yingfeng arrive, Xinzheng's originally solemn face showed a smile, and it wasn't until the quiet of the night that he showed a hint of fatherly love. Looking at the obedient child in front of him, Xinzheng's eyes showed an incredibly compassionate expression. The child in front of him is truly outstanding and makes him deeply proud. At the age of only 5, he had already risen to 1,000 pounds, and even the first swordsman of the great Qin was willing to bow down. This is his child of Xinzheng. The bloodline of Daqin. Father. Feeling the fatherly love from Xinzheng, Yingfeng's heart also melted a bit. He was an orphan in his past life and had never been pampered. Now, although he is Xinzheng and has many tasks, he genuinely cares for him, which really moves him. If all the sons of this king can be as excellent as my Feng'er, then why worry about me? Xinzheng sighed deeply. Father, every one of my winner's bloodlines is a dragon and phoenix among people. Yingfeng responded with a smile, although he knew in his heart what kind of personality the other sons had. How could he refute his old father? Ha, that's right. As a winner, I am truly a dragon and phoenix among people. Xinzheng laughed heartily, feeling immensely relieved for Yingfeng's understanding, but then he seemed to have thought of something, but his eyes dimmed and he let out a deep sigh. Feng'er, do you know why father asked you to come late at night today? Father, I really don't know about this. Yingfeng is extremely honest because he really doesn't know. Suddenly, a spiritual light flashed in his mind, echoing the words spoken by Xinzheng just now. He spoke cautiously in a low voice. Father, isn't it because other brothers didn't succeed? Xinzheng rarely mentioned other brothers and summoned him late at night, probably unaware that the prince had provoked him. Not bad, it's truly my talent. I'm so smart that I won my father's heart. Xinzheng burst out laughing again, deeply comforting and caressing Yingfeng's head. Immediately, he picked up a memorial directly from the nearby desk and handed it to Yingfeng. Although my son is 5 years old, he should know all the characters. Looking at the memorial handed over by Xinzheng, Yingfeng understood that today's theme had arrived. The small hand took the memorial, and before he could open it, he saw the text on the seal of the memorial and couldn't help but be taken aback. Zhao Jing's letter to advise father. Fu Su. Take a look at Yingfeng's stunned expression. Xinzheng spoke with some helplessness. Open it up and take a look. This is the national strategy that your elder brother personally taught me. Although the words do not express their meaning, there is an indescribable disappointment in the eyes. Yingfeng frowned slightly as he opened the memorial. A few minutes later. Under the flickering lights, Yingfeng put down his memorial and his mouth twitched slightly. Good guy, he finally knows why his father's expression is like this. Even he was speechless in reading this memorial. As the crown prince of the Great Qin, Fu Su, facing the turbulent border situation of Zhao, actually boarded the carriage and instructed Xinzheng to focus on appeasing him, not to confront the army, in order to avoid causing trouble. Everything is primarily focused on the internal affairs of the people. If the state of Zhao is pressuring each other step by step, then it is appropriate to counterattack, not too forcefully, to avoid damaging the harmony between the two countries. This is really for a moment, he didn't know how to evaluate it as good. This operation couldn't help but reminding Feng of a dynasty known for its weakness in his past life memories. Although wealthy, he is beaten and slaughtered every day. He never expected such a thing to happen before his own eyes. And the initiator is actually his big brother. For a while, I didn't know how to make him roast. My son, if it were with you, how would we deal with such a change in the state of Zhao? As Yingfeng finished reading the memorial, Xinzheng suddenly spoke up and asked, with a hint of anticipation on his face. He wants to see his little son. What should he do in the face of such a move? Faced with Xinzheng's inquiry, Yingfeng pondered for a moment, and then his eyes instantly turned cold. Strike with one punch, otherwise 100 punches will come. Such a turbulent change, the only way to stop the war is with war. Stop the war with war. Chapter 6. Stop the war with war. Stop the conflict with a sword. Together and vertically connected. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Stop the war with war. Stop the war with war. Xinzheng muttered, his eyes couldn't help but brighten. Okay, okay. That's right. Indeed, it is truly my son, and it coincides with the idea of being a father. Xinzheng laughed heartily, although his face moved slightly, his heart was filled with surprise. For him, the great Qin Empire expanded its territory. To establish a country through military means, how can one be as weak and exceptionally weak as Fu Su? Only by killing those rebels who dared to rebel. Qin will truly settle down. Hey! Thinking of this, Xinzheng couldn't help but sigh in his heart. If Fu Su had a decisive 5-point victory, how could it have caused him such a headache? Unfortunately. Fenger, have you been soaking in the study these days? Is there such a thing? Although the government is busy, Xinzheng is still extremely concerned about Yingfeng. Yes, father. Yingfeng didn't hide anything, even in response. Since that's the case, then Father Wang will test you well. Although Yingfeng is only 5 years old at this moment. But in Xinzheng's eyes, this son's intelligence has surpassed all his sons. Even including his big brother Fu Su. Father, please speak. Yingfeng remains respectful. But in my heart, I was pondering whether to be a little low-key. If exposed too much. It seems not very good for oneself. My son, what should we do if the state of Zhao stubbornly resists and our great Qin cannot quickly annihilate it? When it came to political matters, Xinzheng's gaze became much more solemn. He wants to see what kind of words this son, who has always surprised him, will say. Upon hearing Xinzheng's words, Yingfeng pondered for a moment. Father, from what my courtiers have seen, we can unite Han to besiege Zhao, presenting a situation of a pincer attack from the north and south. At that time, the state of Zhao will inevitably lead to its own chaos. In less than a year, the state of Zhao will surely bow down to our great Qin and declare allegiance. And as for how to control South Korea. Yingfeng gave a cold smile and said, the generation of Wuxia in Korea is ambitious. My father only needs to lure him with power, and he will definitely compromise. He is naturally extremely familiar with the history of the 6 countries. I also deeply understand that this person in front of me will truly sweep the 6 harmonies and unify the 4 seas in the future. Create a great Qin empire. If he could play a role in this and accelerate the end of this unification war. It would be great if the Qin could shed less blood. However, at this moment he did not realize and listened to his words. Xinzheng's breath on the desk had become incredibly heavy. Looking at him was like looking at a monster. Deep in the dragon's eyes, there is an immense excitement, genius, absolute true genius. His son has such insight. If it weren't for this extremely similar face to himself, he would probably have thought he was being turned green. Feeling Xinzheng's incredibly intimidating gaze, Yingfeng was shocked in his heart. Oh no, it seems to have been exposed too much. Immediately, he bent down and apologized again. This is my humble opinion obtained from books. Please advise my father, Wang Mingjian. No matter what, just push it to ancient books. No. Listening to Yingfeng's words, Xinzheng suddenly realized and stared deeply at the son. My son's suggestion is very good, so Father Wang can implement it according to this. Regarding what is seen in the book of Yingfeng, Xinzheng is not a fool, naturally will not believe it. How could the current situation in Korea be mentioned in the book? He knows even Wuxia. It seems that my son is extremely concerned about the affairs of the Qin. I have such a strategy at a young age. It is hard to imagine what achievements will be made in the future. For a while, Xinzheng even began to look forward to the situation 10 years from now. Watching Yingfeng, Xinzheng spoke with a heavy heart for a while, and he said in a deep voice. My son is good. When we go to the Yin Yang family this time, we will fight for a breath for our royal family and show those people that our royal family members also have the ability to govern heaven and earth. Xinzheng has arrogance, incomparable arrogance. So, his son must also have such arrogance. Wherever you are, let the world see. How excellent is his son Xinzheng. Yes, thank you very much, father. Feeling the anticipation in Xinzheng's words, Yingfeng solemnly agreed. No need for him to say, he will also maintain the royal pride. I will never let this beloved father in front of me down. It was already late at night, and I will start school tomorrow. Xinzheng did not stay much longer. After a brief chat, let Yingfeng turn around and leave. After waiting for Yingfeng to leave, Xinzheng's original eyes suddenly became incredibly profound. Zhang Han. With a cold shout, Zhang Han's body immediately appeared and knelt in front of Xinzheng. Afterwards, I ordered the shadow guard to pay close attention to the 19th prince. If there are any abnormalities, I will report them to you as soon as possible. If there is any accident. Looking directly at Zhang Han, the imperial aura emanating endlessly emanated. When even Zhang Han stood up with cold hair all over his body. No. I will definitely die without hesitation. Also. Thinking back to his words about winning the win just now, Xinzheng pondered for a moment. Immediately invite guest minister Li Si to come and see me. Chapter 7. Emperor Taiichi. Not seeing fate. Fated to die young. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Step out of the palace. Looking at the stars, Yingfeng stepped onto the carriage brought by the guards. The horse's hooves let out a chirp and began to start. The night was as bright as dawn, and Yingfeng leaned his wrist against his head, closing his eyes and quietly cultivating himself. I read too many books today, but I feel a bit tired. After an unknown amount of time, Yingfeng seemed to feel something and slowly opened his eyes. Unexpectedly, before my eyes, it transformed into a purple space. In space, the void is brilliant, surrounded by mist. Underneath my feet is a map of a void and starry sky, everything seems to have no time, no space. Yin Yang illusion is really a good technique. Seeing such a strange situation, there were no waves or any signs of panic on Yingfeng's face. On the contrary, there was a smile at the corner of the mouth, as if he had already seen through everything. At such a young age, I am so calm. It seems that you are truly extraordinary. A phantom suddenly emerged from the void, dressed in a black-purple robe and wearing a huge mask, with a voice like illusion. Behind the mask, there seemed to be a pair of eyes staring fixedly at Yingfeng, trying to fully see him through. But Yingfeng is not afraid at all, looking at each other. He naturally knew who the person in front of him was, the leader of the Yin Yang family, Emperor Taiichi. Being able to pull him into such a spatial illusion invisibly, the strength of Donghuang Taiichi is immeasurable. A faint aura emanated from the huge figure of Emperor Taiichi, pressing towards the victory of the wind. The air was filled with an incredibly solemn aura, but in the face of such a terrifying aura, Yingfeng remained expressionless and had no ripples in his eyes. There was no aura emanating from him, but he still remained as the pillar of the sky in the story of the stormy waves, unmoved at all. After a few breaths, the overwhelming aura finally dissipated. The eyes behind the mask of Emperor Taiichi are even more unfathomable. Under the pressure of his imposing aura, he remained neither humble or arrogant, and his face remained unchanged. This son is truly extraordinary. The 19th prince is indeed peculiar, it seems that I have taken a wrong look. His voice was ethereal, as if coming from all directions. Do you have any thoughts on including His Highness Ben in this space? Yingfeng's faint words revealed a chill in his eyes. Is it because you want to assassinate my prince? Speaking of which, his momentum erupted from top to bottom, and a dragon-shaped phantom condensed behind him. That towering momentum surged into the clouds, making the stars above the 9 heavens tremble a bit. And the eyes behind the mask of the Eastern Emperor Taiichi suddenly shook, because he seemed to be in a daze on the young man in front of him, only to see another person. The monarch of the Great Qin, the Supreme Emperor. Xinzheng. That real dragon that dominates the 9 heavens. I am a person from the Great Qin dynasty, so naturally I would not assassinate His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. Oh. I hope so. However, with your incarnation, you can't even kill me. Faced with the response from Emperor Taiichi, Yingfeng sneered coldly. The dragon-shaped phantom on his body also involuntarily disappeared. For a moment, he returned to his usual 5-year-old child. He had already realized that the Eastern Emperor in front of him was no more than a clone of a remnant. However, such remnants have the power to pull him into the illusion space. Such strength is truly unfathomable. You are indeed extraordinary, but compared to the king, you are still far behind. Donghuang Taiyi continued to speak in a deep voice. The reason why I see Yingfeng at night is naturally because I want to see his talent. I want to see who the prince who can gain the favor of Xinzheng is. And tonight, I saw that it wasn't as he expected, it was indeed extraordinary. But it's just that. Oh. It seems that Lord Donghuang has some ability to see through his father's orders. Looking at the huge body in front of him, Yingfeng said with great interest. According to legend, the Yin Yang family is mysterious and unpredictable. Being able to explore the past and look into the future, he actually wants to see if this legend is true. If it is true, it represents the value of entering the Yin Yang Academy. Xinzheng, no one can surpass him, even you, or anyone from the 9 provinces of the world today. He is destined to become a great existence. Donghuang Taiyi's voice was muffled, and the void was ethereal. Although appearing calm, one can still see from afar the prospect of Xinzheng in his words. And you, can't see your destiny. Emperor Taiichi spoke again with a slightly skeptical tone. He had seen the fate of countless people, but only the person in front of him was like a mist that he couldn't see through at all. A person without destiny is destined for this life. Fate is full of ups and downs, and fate is easy to fail. And this also means that in his eyes, even if the current winning wind is full of talent, it is destined to be a brilliant meteor, flashing away in a flash. Oh. Yingfeng's eyes narrowed. Looking into the eyes of Emperor Taiichi, there was more profound meaning. It seems that this guy is even more mysterious and unpredictable than he imagined. Can't you see fate? He is a traveler. How can we see it again? The atmosphere was slightly silent. Ha! Fate. Watching the Eastern Emperor take a long time without any action, Yingfeng chuckled lightly and waved his hand. I'm tired, let's stop here tonight. Remember, if you dare to offend like this again next time. At this point, a burst of essence flashed in Yingfeng's eyes, and his whole body was as powerful as the sea, piercing into the clouds. Even if you are a land immortal, the leader of the Yin Yang family. I will definitely kill you, young master. Click. Click. Where there is no space, cracks and cracks break down. On the ground, the Star Palace trembles. Boom. Accompanied by a roar in my mind. Yingfeng slowly opened his eyes, which were filled with immense depth. The illusion of the void in front of me has disappeared. Instead, it is the carriage space. He's back again. With no ripples in his eyes, he looked at the distant moonlight in the void, and the corner of Yingfeng's mouth curved slightly. Is there a theory of Yin Yang scholarship? I have become more and more interested, young master. Chapter 8. My destiny. It's up to you to say it yourself. Understanding Yin and Yang. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Yin Yang Academy. The most mysterious academic institution in the entire Qin dynasty, and the pinnacle of Yin Yang scholarship. Only about 300 people are recruited each year, and each person is either naturally gifted or an absolute powerful figure. What people value most here is the unparalleled generation of heaven. Even if it is imperial power and wealth, if 1 year does not meet the requirements for further education, they will be directly discouraged. Even a noble prince is no exception. Standing in front of the Yin Yang Academy, even the wealthy Yingfeng couldn't help but marvel at the grandeur of this place. In front of me, amidst the vast mountain veins, a huge academic palace is built against the mountain, shrouded in clouds and mist. Clusters of buildings surround its mountain range, with various shapes and towering structures. The construction of that main school palace is extremely unique, with unique craftsmanship, like a masterpiece of heaven and earth, with sharp edges that pierce the sky. This is the Yin Yang Academy. The most core building that has existed in the Yin Yang family for 100 years. With an edict from Xinzheng, there were not many obstacles to Yingfeng's enrollment. Only the Yin Yang family guard who handled the admission procedures gave Yingfeng a strange glance. As the prince, Yingfeng has a noble status and naturally enjoys a single mansion exclusive to the royal family. Except for the 2 book boys who came specifically to serve him, Yingfeng will not bring much of the rest. The school uniform of the Yin Yang Academy is a uniform purple cloth shirt, with purple gold embroidery on the cuffs, which looks exceptionally beautiful. And Yingfeng naturally received a purple cedar, but when it was placed on his young body, it appeared incredibly broad. Coupled with his immature face, it suddenly appeared inexplicably cute. Looking at the strange expressions of the 2 book boys, as if seeing cute pets, Yingfeng couldn't help but twitch his lips. Okay, it seems that he will be like this for a long time to come. As soon as he finished tidying up, Yingfeng walked towards the largest library in the entire Yin Yang Academy. Walking on the road, the petite figure and immature face immediately caught the attention of passing students around. Hey, who is this kid? I don't know, he looks so small. Indeed, but he looks so cute, said the 2 women with starry eyes. I'm not quite sure. Judging from the direction he's going, isn't he heading to the library? Library, can't it? He looks so small, can he really reach the books in that library? Ha ha ha. Curiosity from the surroundings did not stop Yingfeng from walking, but continued to move towards the library. Finally, after passing through countless pavilions, Yingfeng finally arrived at the largest library of the Yin Yang Academy. Looking up, even Yingfeng couldn't help but marvel at the profound heritage of the Yin Yang family at this moment. The huge library is divided into 6 levels and presents a spire shape. Towering into the clouds, under the purple mist of night, it appears incredibly mysterious. At the entrance of the attic on the bottom floor, students from the Yin Yang Academy kept walking in and out, each with a thoughtful expression on their faces. It seems that this will be my place of residence from now on. Yingfeng took a deep breath and walked towards the attic. His short stature naturally caught the attention of everyone around him. But unlike outside, the people entering and exiting this attic only gave him a silent glance, but there was no mockery. Fu Pai. Stepping into the library, the first thing he saw at first glance was an old man. The old man's face turned pale, as if he was about to go to the ground. His eyes narrowed, as if he couldn't see what was in front of him. But when Yingfeng approached him, he spoke directly. The Fu card is equivalent to the certification card of the Yin Yang Academy, extremely important and cannot be lost. If forgotten, one will be immediately expelled from the Yin Yang Academy. And if you want to enter this library, the mansion plaque is the only proof. He took out a token from his pocket and handed it to the old man with the word Yingfeng engraved on it. Yingfeng waited patiently. The old man leaned down in his hand and carefully pondered, as if feeling the words engraved on the mansion plaque. Wind. Whispering softly, the old man slapped his hand, but quickly recovered to his original state. Return the mansion card in hand to Yingfeng, and the old man spoke softly. Each floor of the library has extremely strict regulations, and must pass the academic assessment of Yin and Yang before being able to move up to the next level. The higher you go, the more you can come into contact with top level Yin and Yang techniques. With your current permissions, you can only watch from the second floor. The old man spoke softly, but each sentence was very clear. Upon hearing this, Yingfeng couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. This Yin Yang Academy is really unique, even the library has strict regulations. Even at the level of reading, there is a hierarchical system. However, in this way, it's really interesting. With a curved corner of his mouth, Yingfeng bowed to the old man, indicating that he knew, and then walked towards the second floor of the Yin Yang Pavilion. Although he is a prince, now living in the Yin Yang Academy, he is just an ordinary student. And if you want to step into the top of that library, naturally, only by being down to earth can you reach the top. And his goal for himself is to reach the top level of the library within a month. Chapter 9. Beauty Embryo. Encounter Yan Fei, who is a mediocre talent. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hey, have you heard about it? Recently, there's a fierce kid appearing in the library. Yes, I've heard about it too. He reads books on the second floor of the library every morning and doesn't leave until midnight. I'll go. Where did this kid come from? Why are you so diligent? Don't you all know this? He is the 19th prince of the great prince, Yingfeng. What, it's him, how could it be? Isn't it that he's only 5 years old? He's so hardworking at 5. Woo, I'm sour. Yin Yang Academy. Several students are passionately discussing the latest gossip about the Yin Yang Academy in recent days. And the most popular one among them is the legendary 19th prince who had just entered school for 3 days and had already become one. It is said that the 19th prince would step directly into the library and read books until midnight every morning. For 5 whole days, every day was like this. Such persistent determination is truly shocking. You should know that all the academic records of Yin and Yang in the library are dull and tedious techniques that can be described. Not to mention being a student, even many teachers of Yin Yang studies may find it difficult to sustain their studies. And the 19 princes had a noble status, and were only 5 years old. They were already carefree and should have indulged in play. But now they are even more hardworking than them all, which is really hard to believe. One by one, everyone had a deep admiration for the 5-year-old Yingfeng. At the center of everyone's discourse, the protagonist of the story wins the wind. At this moment, I am tirelessly absorbing knowledge from books in the corner of the second floor of the library. For him, who has an incredible understanding, this dull and uninteresting academic world of Yin and Yang is a treasure that can be infinitely dug deep in the eyes of others. Every word and sentence can be extended to his cognition. Half an hour later, Yingfeng closed the book and rubbed his eyes. After watching for a long time, sometimes my heart can become confused. Many times, at some point, he could always feel as if he had understood something, but in the end, he was still close to the door. It's a bit short, what is it? Yingfeng muttered in a low voice, constantly pondering in his mind, and at that moment, he suddenly felt a floral fragrance coming from his side. A figure arrived beside him. I didn't expect that the 19th prince, at such an age, would also come to the Yin Yang Academy to comprehend the Taoist scriptures. The sound is light and pleasant, like the lark in the trees. Yingfeng turned around and saw a girl about 10 years old in front of him. The girl's skin is stronger than snow, and her eyes are like clear water. Although she is also dressed in purple cedar, when looking around, she carries an indescribable noble temperament. Obviously, this is a future beauty embryo. And her face was somewhat familiar, as Yingfeng raised his eyebrows with a hint of probing. Yan Fei. I didn't expect the 19th prince to recognize me. The girl, also known as Yan Fei, was somewhat surprised. She has never met Yingfeng before, how could this kid know her? Watching Yan Fei's surprised expression, Yingfeng smiled. Even if he didn't know about the future, he was already very familiar with Yan Fei in front of him. Just because this little girl at this moment, although only 10 years old, is already the strongest genius among this generation of Yin Yang scholars. In just 5 months of enrollment, I already have the authority to step into the 6th floor of the library. Such an extraordinary speed is already beyond the reach of peers. How could he not know such a celebrity? I wonder if you have been reading here for many days. Can you see many extraordinary things? Yan Fei asked Yingfeng with some curiosity. Although she was outstanding, she was still a little girl, and her nature was naturally in the year of curiosity. Moreover, the prince in front of me is only 5 years old, yet he can spend a day reading in this library, which is truly unbelievable. Even she couldn't bear the boredom in this library earlier. Do you see anything? Upon hearing Yan Fei's question, Yingfeng lowered his head and began to ponder slightly. The book is complex with many structures, and even he finds it difficult to describe in specific words what he has seen. Perhaps I should take a closer look. Yingfeng murmured in a low voice. Immediately, she ignored Yan Fei beside her and immediately opened the book in her hand. Immerse oneself directly in it without hesitation. Obviously, I have long forgotten that there is still the strongest genius in the Yin Yang Academy around me. And when Yan Fei saw the scene before her, she was completely stunned. What is the situation? She was actually ignored by someone. Although she is not a proud person, being completely ignored by someone indirectly and clearly makes her feel a bit uncomfortable. Looking at Yingfeng with her eyes fixed on books, her beautiful eyes twitched slightly. Perhaps it's just a forced reading. If he really understood, why didn't he answer when he asked him what he saw just now? She had already seen countless mediocre talents who struggled to catch up in this world, but in the end, they were just the clouds and smoke of the past. And the kid in front of me is probably the same. How can the theory of Yin Yang scholarship be as imagined by the world? If there is no talent, even 100 years of time cannot comprehend. Chapter 10. Is winning wind crazy? 7 days without sleep. The divine soul is wrong. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Yan Fei wanted to say something more, but as she looked at Yingfeng, who was already completely immersed in books, the corner of her mouth twitched slightly. It's just that. After all, he is just a person who wants to make useless efforts. Perhaps after 2 or 3 days, he will find that his efforts are worthless. Thinking of this, Yan Fei no longer had much interest in the young prince in front of her, but turned around and left directly. In her opinion, Yingfeng will completely recognize himself in 2 or 3 days, and eventually give up his Yin Yang studies and return to the palace to be his carefree prince. But after turning around and leaving, she seemed to remember something, then turned back and took out a pastry from her arms and placed it next to Yingfeng. She couldn't bear being such a hard-working person. Let's take this small pastry as my own heartfelt gesture. During the time when Yingfeng was immersed in books, outside, at the Xinzheng palace, Xinzheng is handling the memorial in his hand. And by his side, Feilu stood ready, bowing down and waiting. Half an hour later, Xinzheng finally finished correcting the last memorial in his hand and let out a heavy breath. Father, the memorial has been reviewed today and should be taken back to the palace. Feilu's careful way. Xinzheng agreed. Although Feilu's kindness may have caused him some headaches, this filial piety can be felt. Feilu, how has Feng Er been in the Yin Yang Academy lately? In recent days, dealing with the affairs of Zhao, Xinzheng has been extremely busy. Now that he has free time, he can't help but think back to his youngest son. He has been enrolled for 7 days, and I don't know what his current situation is. Father, I heard that my 19th younger brother is studying hard and diligently at the Yin Yang Academy. He enters the Yin Yang library every day to read books and only returns to the palace at midnight. Feilu arched his hand and answered, to be honest, even he felt a little admiration for the perseverance of Yingfeng. Oh. It's good to have such a mindset, and it's not in vain to send him to school alone. Fathers all hope that their sons can become dragons, even the esteemed Xinzheng is no exception. He was naturally relieved to hear that Yingfeng was studying so hard. Looking at the silent Feilu, Xinzheng suddenly spoke up. Fusu, do you have any thoughts on me giving the only enrollment quota to your 19th younger brother? Fusu was slightly taken aback, seemingly not realizing why his father suddenly asked about this matter. Father, my son has no thoughts, Fusu respectfully answered, but Xinzheng looked at him and suddenly let out a sigh. Really? You don't have such thoughts, but there are many dissatisfied people in this palace. Father. The quota to enter the Yin Yang Academy is extremely precious. I don't know how many people want to obtain it, but now it has been obtained by Feng Heir. I'm afraid there are already many people waiting for Feng Heir to make a fool of themselves. Xinzheng's deep way, while Fu Su remained silent, his fist involuntarily clenched in his sleeve. Yes, who wouldn't envy the treatment that 19th brother has received? But Xinzheng's painting style suddenly changed and he said lightly, I believe that Feng Heir will never embarrass his father. He will definitely prove to the world that the admission quota given to him, despite all difficulties, will definitely be worth it. Looking into the distance, as if in the endless darkness, he could see a small body struggling to absorb the knowledge from the book. In the end, he grew into a pillar capable of supporting the great Qin. In the blink of an eye, 7 days have passed. A figure stepped into the library, and many students around saw this person with a look of awe in their eyes. Just because the person in front of her is Yan Fei, the strongest genius of this generation of Yin Yang scholars. The reason why she came today is because she has a question about academic Yin and Yang, and wants to step into the 6 floors of the library to find the answer. She had already become accustomed to the countless strange gazes around her. In the wonderful mysterious formation on the first floor of the road, he held a magic seal in his hand and his breath lingered. This formation is a unique teleportation formation for Yin Yang experts. As long as internal energy is injected, it can be teleported to any level. As a genius who had already passed the 6th level qualification, Yan Fei naturally became familiar with it. And just as she was about to bear the Dharma seal, her eyes suddenly moved, and for some reason, she was teleported to the 2nd floor by a strange and mysterious means. Slowly walking towards a corner on the 2nd floor, if she remembers well, 7 days ago, it seemed like there was a 19th prince reading here. She actually wants to see if the 19th prince is still here after 7 days. The corner of a purple robe caught Yan Fei's eye, and she couldn't help but be taken aback. Looking over, she still found that her body was incredibly familiar. Yingfeng, is it still here? At this moment, he seemed completely immersed in the world in the book, completely unaware of the arrival of Yan Fei. Her eyes were like shining stars, and her extremely serious appearance made Yan Fei feel dazed for a moment. I only feel that what I am in front of is not a 5-year-old child, but a literary master who is striving to acquire knowledge. Is he really still watching? This kid, are you crazy?